So, one major part of internet culture regarding trading and sports gambling nowadays is that there's kind of two heads of the same beast. And it's what will tear apart so many opportunities for young guys and destroy wealth for millions in the future. So these days, sports betting it's really hard to escape. It's something like nearly half of the top 10 sports apps on the App Store are actually betting apps. And it's becoming ubiquitous basically everywhere over the last few years. I mean, look at the social media accounts of some of the most prominent people in Hollywood or in the sports world, like LeBron James. They're advertising for companies like Stake, FanDuel, BetMGM, DraftKings. Even online casinos are gaining insane popularity of late. Now, myself personally, full disclosure, I'm going to sound like a total loser, but I've never placed a sports bet or registered for an online gambling account ever in my life, and I never intend to because I sort of view sports gambling and Wall Street bets type quote unquote investors as essentially the same person, a dopamine starved freak that, wants to get caught up in the rush of quick wins rather than actually building wealth down, for the long term because short-term dopamine chasing and unsustainable levels of returns are, unfortunately never going to work as a long-time strategy. I mean, if you were consistently able to beat the S&P 500 over, a long long period, say 5 plus years even, congratulations, you might just be Warren Buffett. The reality is none of us are great at picking stocks. None of us are great at picking options. Oftentimes it's, a mix of either the perfect storm or you did a ridiculous amount of technical analysis that, took you away from being able to pay attention to your children who now have daddy issues. So when you think about these sort of Wall Street bets type guys, the risky retail traders, while their risk tolerance might be higher, especially among young people that are just opening up their Robinhood account for the very first time and getting ready to lose the $10,000 that grandma left them. Both groups are chasing quick wins. They think that because their risk tolerance is higher, that they have like some kind of competitive edge. Oh, I'm willing to expose myself to, the high risk, high reward AI company that has diluted its shareholders for the fifth time this quarter. Congratulations, a new bag holder is born. And especially like higher risk trades like 0 days till expiration options, on the likes of SPY or QQQ, which tracks the NASDAQ. A lot of those function in the same way as a bet because when it hits, it can still feel like skill rather than luck. But where the delusion comes in is thinking that you're actually good at it because, sports gambling and risky trading can provide you with this illusion of control. Sports bettors, especially, might think that they understand the team dynamics or the strategy or the lineups or even the possibilities of game plan change throughout the game, maybe micromanaging the players, shifting the pivot, I don't know, whatever sports ball lingo you want to make to cope about the fact that your parlay is actually going to hit. Meanwhile, your five Red Bull vodkas deep at the bar. All right. It leads them to make certain selections on their bets. A lot of these are combined with alcohol. You're throwing away a good chunk of your paycheck, basically donating it to these companies. And by proxy, because some of them are publicly traded, you're donating to hedge funds through sports betting. Congratulations, you're giving BlackRock even more tendies to buy up homes with. Now, I know all of that is, super doom and gloom, but the reality is like sports betting and risky retail trading, like this isn't something that is sustainable. It's something that you can do on the side if you want, like that quick fix or that dopamine hit. Maybe it's a little bit more of a hobby for you. But, when it comes to actually building wealth or thinking that you can beat the matrix, this isn't really the way to go about it because, even retail traders, especially the Wall Street Bets variety, they think that they've done some research or maybe not under the illusion at all of their gambling. Now, of course, I use Wall Street Bets from time to time. I think it's actually a pretty good place to maybe get your eyes on some tickers that you might not have considered otherwise. But it can be kind of disheartening to look at these amplified gains and losses because you have these guys that are, potentially trust fund babies with a risk appetite of, somebody who was in the late stage of the 2007 bubble, right before the housing market crash. And I think a lot of that is this over reliance on dopamine. Wins feel incredible and you're constantly chasing that dragon. That first time that you make a couple grand off of like a QQQ call on what seemed like a market down day, it's like you can never return to this place. You can never return to this place. You're going to turn your portfolio to zero one way or another, especially if this remains your primary strategy. And, especially in this scenario, like losses get rationalized or even chased sometimes. Like it's mostly this never ending engine of cope and thinking that it's possible to make it back, after blowing up your account. As of, today is April 29th, Poet Technologies shit down something like 50% yesterday. And there was a guy on Wall Street Bets, I kid you not, on Friday. You can go and look it up. He had put hundreds of thousands of dollars on Poet Technologies, I think around or after college, and it went up to 800K. He didn't sell, lost 300, the next trading day. That's how this kind of thing works. And, in this kind of situation, winning becomes less about the money and more about the rush of just winning, quote unquote. I mean, what is winning? Making a good amount of money, making a 10 bagger, and it really doesn't help that the social reinforcement element is very strong here too. Group chats, forums, communities, social media, all of this amplifies the appeal of sports betting and risky retail trading and can create the illusion that many people are making money. The reality is, in this kind of market, the outcomes can often be binary because none of us are experts. So many factors are not controllable. And if you want a better idea of how people are actually doing on something like Wall Street Bets, be a true degenerate and pop yourself into the daily thread. See what kind of absolute degeneracy and madness goes on in there. And, and that just plays into like the culture, right? Risk taking, memes, losing is normalized, risk taking is encouraged, but small losses can stack up over time. And if your goal is building long-term wealth, a few bad bets is thousands of dollars lost. And while you might be moping about after the loss, you're not even considering the fact that $3,000, $5,000, there's a huge opportunity cost there as well. Because you could have put those funds in a Roth IRA, say every year that you don't max your Roth IRA, which is like $7,500 nowadays, assuming an 8% annualized return over 40 years, you're looking at something like a $50,000 tax-free opportunity cost. And that's not even counting what that would have done, with all those other years of contributions for compounding anyways. So, you need these reliable compounding vehicles because the formula is always, always, always going to be that long-term investing into reliable diversified index funds or ETFs, while it is, yes, slow and very boring, it will keep you consistent. And if you need that dopamine fix, get your compounding engines to a certain level or milestone, say 100K, 250K, and then enable options trading to hedge your shares. All right. And then use some of that interest generated, S&P goes up 1-2% in a day. That could be $1,000, $2,000 move once you get to a certain level of equity in your account. And that can be what you do for those riskier trades because quick trading, in summation, is fast, emotional, and volatile. But consistency, relaxing, deleting your brokerage app off of your phone and never paying attention to it and just automating your investing, that is what is going to actually build you that real wealth over the long term. So guys, thank you for watching. Stay easy, stay invested, never sell, and don't be like those Wall Street Bets boys. Unless you like fun.